week we have a new Apple drama. Today we're kicking off with a Wall Street Journal article that said that Apple was cutting back its orders because of the iPhone 5. Now, our reporter, Rocco Pandola, had a good point. He said, you know what? They always do this after the holiday season. And he said that he felt their sources were a little thin. So I guess, do you think that this is a normal thing for them to do, to cut back on the orders after the holidays, or should we be concerned?
I think that with the stock going from 700 to 500, what you're hoping to hear is they increased in orders.
That would be
nice. That they had so much demand that it took them by surprise, and Chinese demand. Rocco is right in the sense that, look, the sources may not be that good. It did seem thin, and I think Rocco's doing some amazing stuff. His stuff on Best Buy and Apple last week was very good. But the way I'm looking at Apple these days is, why did I go into it to begin with? Why at 50 did I say buy Apple? And the answer was my kids. I mean, my youngest had one iPod, wanted a second, wanted it engraved. I realized that there's a fashion and accessory perspective on it. My eldest has always loved her Mac Air, always loved her iPod. Doesn't really use her iPad that much. But this weekend, something happened, and my daughter texted me. I know anecdotal isn't as good as empirical, but she texted me and said, Dad, do you know anyone at Apple? Because this new iTunes is horrible. And it just so happened that I was having problems with iTunes, and we were trying to figure it out on Sunday how to use it better. And it just seems the Maps, the iTunes, the new plug that nobody likes. I mean, you're going from a company that can't do anything wrong to a company that can't do anything seemingly right, that is charging a lot. And you go to your Verizon or your Verizon reseller, and they're going to tell you, listen, it's just not good enough to be able to charge that premium anymore. You put it all together, coupled with what I heard this fall from my friend Walter Isaacson when I interviewed him at a Bucknell fundraiser, and obviously he wrote the definitive book on jobs. There may not be as much in the pipe, and there may not be any oh my gods. You know what? Isn't Apple's secret the terrific big media?
They always have that big wow factor in that latest greatest, and now it's just a rehash of what they've had before, and they've flooded the markets with so much product that there's too much product.
Right, and Samsung seems to be hotter, so to speak. Now, all that said, let's say they do something, an OMG product. Well, the stock's going to take off. Let's say they make an acquisition with like Cash, which is not doing it. Cash is a great thing, but they got to do something with it. I mean, everyone should try. Who has a big cash position trying to figure out what to do with it. Then it can change. The fortunes of the stock can change. The fortunes of the company. But look, when your kids don't like a product, and you have kids, I have kids. I mean, we tend to listen to them because they're much more involved in the mainstream. And my daughter doesn't idly come to me and say, I know people at Apple, can you do something? Now, there's also this cult of Apple stock. And you go on Twitter at Jim Cramer, and you say something negative about Apple.
They go bananas.
Right, and that's a bad sign. That's not a good sign. And sometimes you have to just thicken your skin, or maybe sometimes you have to just say, listen, I'm not going to go on Twitter right now. Because I have been in the arena for many, many years. And when I have chosen to change my stance because the facts have changed, it's a hated view. But Deborah, let's say I stuck with Apple and just said bye, the whole way.
Wrote it all the way down.
Yeah, well, you know what? That's all. I got to answer to myself, not to the critics. You got to answer to yourself. And when you have, we cut the position in half for Action Alerts after listening to Walter Isaacson saying there is no OMG factor. We keep some because playing with the house is money. But when I come back and don't get any good feedback about Apple, whether it be from the resellers, whether it be from the papers, whether it be from my daughters, what is the point? To appease people who own it?
And interestingly, Doug Cass back in September had said, I'm not liking Apple right now, and gave several reasons why, and it has gone down for a while. So I guess let's just look at the stock itself and look at the price. What's the downside on this stock? Well, you mentioned it's gone from 7 to 5.
I think it's got the downside would be where it yields what the other guys yield, where the valuation. So no one cares about valuation when you're in liquidation mode. You know, I went over a lot of stocks in 2008, 2009 that were very good stocks, and you know, when you're liquidating, when people are just selling because they bought it and they really don't know what they're doing and they want to blame me, they'll say, "Listen, Jim, you put me in it. I didn't put anybody in anything. I've been literally since October now saying, listen, there's no OMG, there's no OMG. Right. I made that very clear. Those who subscribe to ActionAlertsPlus.com know exactly how I feel about this.
A cheap iPhone is not
right.
OMG.
And I am not going to sit here and defend my life against people who are critical of my view, given the fact that I have a product where I play with an open hand. Okay, it's a gated product. Street charges for it. But it has been consistent the whole way. And I am not going to start undercutting the people who subscribe to ActionAlertsPlus.com, where I've been very forthcoming about my view about Apple.
So it could break 500.
Yeah, it could. I mean, you know, we keep a position in it. Sometimes you wish you owned it, sometimes you didn't. But, you know, when I got the text Friday night at 11:30 from my daughter saying, Dad, you got to help on this iTunes, it took my breath away, given the fact that, you know, that a few years ago my daughter said, you've got to get me an iPod or else.
Right.
I trust my kids.
All right. So
they don't care about the stuff.
All right. So Jim is not a buyer of Apple adding to new positions.
Do own it?
He does own it, but it sounds like you're not going to add any positions until you hear about the OMG product.
Exactly.
All right. There you go.